Last Night in Soho is the newest movie from Edgar Wright, who I think is one of the best directors working today. He has really dabbled in several different genres, even though you could classify most of his movies being under the comedy genre. He's also dabbled with the buddy cop / action type of movies. He's even done some horror, some comic book influence with Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. And to say I was excited for this movie would be an understatement. I love a lot of his work, and I just thought that this movie looks like something completely different for him. You know, I mean, even though he has experimented with horror before, this just seemed like straight up horror, like no comedy in it at all, nothing lighthearted really about it. And I was really looking forward to it, and after coming out of it now, I can say with confidence at this moment that this is in my top 3 favorite Edgar Wright films. And I almost don't even want to really talk about the plot to this movie at all, just because there are some very original ideas presented here in comparison to the modern horror movies that we are seeing coming to theaters nowadays. But I will just give a little basic setup for it. We follow the character Ellie, played by Thomasin McKenzie, who just gets accepted into this college in London that is based around fashion design. And when she goes to London, she moves into this bedsit. And every night whenever she goes to sleep in the particular room that she's staying in, she is essentially transported into the 1960s in London, where we see this aspiring singer who goes to clubs and tries to get gigs. And we're basically just able to follow this sort of night in the life of this singer. Instead of day in the life, it's like a night in the life, if that makes any sense, every time that Ellie goes to bed. And with each time she's transported back into the 60s, things get a little bit more suspect, or as the kids these days say, sus. And some things happen. Some dark shit happens, some tension builds. I don't want to talk about it too much though. It gets pretty twisted pretty fast, I'll say that. And as I have already kind of said at this point, I loved this movie. I thought it was such a unique way at blending psychological thriller elements with horror elements as well, while at the same time also having an engaging story and engaging characters, particularly the main character, Ellie, portrayed by Thomasin McKenzie, who is very good in this movie. I liked her a lot in Jojo Rabbit, and so it was nice to see her get more of a lead role. Anya Taylor-Joy is also great as Sandy, who is the singer that we follow in 1960s London. And her character is a bit of a tragic one. She is kind of just forced into the life that she would end up living, singing in these nightclubs, which initially she aspires to do it and she wants to do it, but then once she actually does it, things don't go quite as planned, and it's not quite the fantasy that she envisioned, which I thought was an aspect of the story that was well portrayed, and you could also maybe compare it to the music industry nowadays. I did also like Michael Ejeo in the movie. He plays the character John, who is a kind of love interest for Ellie, or becomes a love interest, I should say. And he was just a really nice character. You know, he's very understanding of kind of what's going on with Ellie, because, and I should have mentioned this, I don't know why I didn't, but Ellie kind of starts to hallucinate a bit. She starts to see things in real life when she's going out in public, going to college, just walking on the street. She starts to see basically some of the things that she sees when she's transported back into the 60s when she goes to sleep. And it really does start to haunt her and put her in various awkward social scenarios. And John is really the one character who understands what she's going through, and he's willing to stand up for her. We don't really know a whole lot about him as a character, but I thought for the role he was given that he served his purpose well. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but there's an ice cream truck right outside my house. I'm just going to keep going, honestly. I don't care if they're still there. I'm just going to keep going with the review. Edgar Wright's direction, as always, is great. You know, it's less of a focus on editing as he normally has, like especially with his most recent film, used to be his most recent film, Baby Driver. But really with all of his movies, there isn't as much of those flashy cuts and fast-paced editing that he's very well known for. He's definitely a bit more subdued this time behind the camera, But I think it worked very well for this movie. I particularly enjoyed his direction in the scenes when we go back to the 60s and go back to the nightclubs in London. I loved a lot of the ideas that this movie presented. However, there were a couple of things that I was able to pick out, a couple of really nitpicks, not really any huge issues or flaws I could find with it. And I really don't consider these things I'm about to talk about to be spoilers, but if you are very particular about what you want to know about a movie going into or a lack thereof, skip to this time if you just don't want to hear what I have to say and you just want to hear my final thoughts. Skip to this time right here and you'll be good. But anyways, so early on in the movie, we are sort of alluded to the fact that Ellie can see ghosts. She looks in the mirror in one of the first scenes, and behind her she sees her mother, who has passed away. And this is alluded to, like I said, very early on in the movie, but they never really touch on it later on. I think there's like one or two other times when she sees someone in a reflection, her mother or maybe someone else who has passed away. And it was pretty much never touched on again. I kind of wish they had, because I think that would have been cool, and that would also maybe correlate to some of the things that happen whenever she goes to sleep and goes back to the 1960s London. There could have been some things that tied together. And then parts of the ending to the movie I think are a bit rushed. It is kind of just one of those things where we find out that a character was actually this person all along. They've always been this person, and just their whole reveal aspect I found to be a bit weak. Also quite predictable. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say like I saw it coming a mile away, but whenever it was revealed, I thought like, okay, I could have guessed that. That's not a big surprise. Last Night in Soho, like I said, it's in my top 3 favorite Edgar Wright movies as of now. I thought it was great. It's another really good horror movie that we got this year. I said it before and I'll say it again, this has been a very good year for horror. And I think this is one of the best we've gotten this year, and I'm going to give The Last Night in Soho an A. And for anyone who's curious, here's a little breakdown of how my rating system works. Like always, let me know what you think of this movie if you have seen it by now. Do you have a favorite Edgar Wright film? I think my favorite would probably be Shaun of the Dead. If not that, then Baby Driver. Those are definitely 1 and 2 for me. And then this would be number 3 as of now. Thank you for watching if you got to this point in the video, and I will see you all later. Peace out.